Yeah, of course. This is a very important point for me, because this leads us maybe to the second question, the formative element, what happened in my memory when I was young. In my childhood, Europe ended at 50 kilometers away from Vienna. So I had the feeling I was really living at the rim of the world. And I remember when my father made some excursions with us, where he showed us the Iron Curtain and the watchtowers, and from the distance we could see also the soldiers with the guns. And if we would move too closely towards the border, they would start directing their weapons towards us. So this was quite scary. And when the Iron Curtain fell in 1989, as far as I remember, you can't remember how relieved I was. I had the feeling that now the world opens and I have access to regions beyond my horizon that I was not able to visit before. I think in general, for my generation, those people, the baby boomers, so to speak, the fall of the Iron Curtain was a very big thing for us, because this gave us the promise of a new freedom. The sad thing is that quite shortly afterwards, in must be 1991, the Iraq war broke out, and this war was broadcasted round the clock on the television, and this was really shocking to see that the promises of freedom and peace that we all had was not fulfilled worldwide. So we were witnessing a very cruel war, and at the same time I was just, so to speak, grown up, had my little family with our first son, and the expectations that we had, that we would now live in freedom and peace, have not been fulfilled. Yeah, the situation now becomes much more difficult in the last 10 years. There are some things that three different types or topics that marked a big change. The first one was this migration that happened in 2015, where the first spontaneous impetus of me and also people that I relate to was very positive. We say those people need help, we give them the help, and they can come. The second thing was that Trump became the president of the United States, proclaiming that America should be first. And Trump gave a very, very bad example how a leader of a nation could be. He's, with his way of rudeness and ignorance, he gave a very bad example, which was copied by a lot of other people. Until now, I see a lot of politicians, whether they are here in Austria or also in the United Kingdom, that have this same attitude in a very brutal and insensitive way. Just by proclaiming things they believe at the moment, and next time they would deny it. And And this showed that there is not this big human unity that we was trying to achieve, not only in Europe but worldwide. So now we have the feeling that we have a separation between different regions of the world: America, Europe, Asia, Russia, and also the East and Africa. Brexit for me is the worst thing that has happened recently to Europe. The European Union is a sort of a peace project. This is often referred to it like that. So that's guaranteed that those enemies that have been fighting against each other, like Germany, France, and England, became partners. And now, as the UK decided, or let's say one of them, a part of them, 50%, decided to leave the European Union, to leave this peace project, I have really big problems understanding what comes afterwards and what will it mean for our European Union and for Europe in general, outside the European Union. What I like with Europe was the fact that, in my understanding, that the nationalism that has been so powerful in the 19th century and has made so many destruction in the world seems to have been banned or at least tamed. But nowadays, nationalism becomes more and more obvious. A lot of tiny groups of people try to proclaim their independency, that they are something special, that they are a nation. And the concept of nation for me is something very questionable. I would be very glad if this notion of nation would not be an issue anymore. I think the worst is Trump, because after World War II, at least in our civilized Western world, there was never a person like him. Well, it's not the point here that I speak about Trump, because I don't want to mention his name so much. But he gave a very bad example, which has been copied by a lot of people. Not, as I said, not only in Austria, but also in other parts. So it became a bad example. And if you're naive, you would think that a good politician, is somebody who is very intelligent. He has a sober mind, he controls his emotions, he has visions, he has a love for his people, and he tries to unite the country. And with Trump, nothing of this is true. And this makes me really sad, and this makes me angry. The ranking is not so easy. I mean, the immigration crisis, as it was called, is in a way the result of a long political situation where we as rich Westerns have been using or misusing the resources of people in other parts of the world. And now we have to pay the bill for that. So I think it's understandable that those people who are now prosecuted and lost everything they had are going towards a place which is more safe. But it's not only about the war in Syria. Migration also happens from people that comes from Africa, because due to the climate change, they have nowadays no living foundation. So they need to go somewhere where they have a better living. And migration was happening all over our history. If you speak about Völkerwanderung, this was constitutive for the forming of our European continent. Without those people who came from the east, we wouldn't be there. So I think it's quite a normal process. It's not the best moment, but it's a moment that is that has a necessity, and we cannot say we are not responsible for those things that our forefathers have done. So we have to deal with it. It's a situation that happens, and we have to take a position towards it. But we should also see that we cannot just hide ourselves in our castle of safe and secure Europe, but we have also to take our responsibility for those people who have no shelter. The fall of the borders between the countries, so that we can now easily change from one country to one other. Also that we have in many places in Europe common currency. And not to forget on the academic level, so that we have Erasmus, which I think is a wonderful project, which brings together students and scholars all over Europe and creates also a sort of mutual understanding. Vienna is a very sexy place, so a lot of students want to study here, and we get a lot of Erasmus applicants. And I always take at least one a year in my class, although sometimes they are maybe undergraduates and I'm only teaching graduate students. Anyway, I have the feeling when I can select somebody from these applicants, they can bring some new perspectives. And it's also interesting if I get in a teaching relationship with them, that I also understand more how it works in different countries, in different systems, what music studies are and how they are constructed and structured. And on the other hand, I'm made a lot of outgoing projects with Erasmus. That means that I was invited by people from Europe to give master classes and work with the students. And this was also a very good experience that I gained by that. Well, if you ask me frankly, I identify myself as a human being, as a citizen of the world. So Europe, of course, this is my closest neighborhood, my environment, where I'm based, where my cultural influences come. But this is not so important. I mean, if I'm abroad or somewhere, it's yes. I'm not speaking about I'm a European, and it doesn't matter so much for me. Incorporating also the small former East European countries into the European Union. I mean, we have to distinguish between Europe and European Union, but I think the European Union as a sort of political construction has an importance also for our peacekeeping. And therefore, I think that countries like Albania and Northern Macedonia should also become part of Europe. So I think the more we are, the better it is. Even though these are very small countries, but they would also benefit from being part of this big whole system. Well, all these categories of national musics stem from the 19th century. Nowadays, it's completely obsolete to think in these terms. I think it's problematic if you say I'm writing Austrian music, because this was never the case that somebody wrote Austrian music. This is just an artificial label that you give maybe for marketing, I don't know. And therefore I think that European music is as stupid as Austrian music being used as a term for classifying music. And if I look at contemporary music nowadays, whether it's from Europe or from Russia or from the United States, nationality doesn't matter so much. I mean, if it's not music that is based on traditional national anthems, for example, okay, then it's clear it's more American or more Russian. But as far as you get rid of these things and you compose music that is based on abstract musical ideas, I don't understand why this has been chosen. I mean, I would say if you need something like that, I would say why not saying it's the anthem of the world? Because in the text it says, Freude schöner Götterfunken, Tochter aus Elysium, wir betreten Freude, feuertrunken himmlische dein Heiligtum. Deine Zauber binden wieder, was die Mode streng geteilt. Alle Menschen werden Brüder. Not only the Europeans, alle Menschen, all men become brothers. This is, I think, the message, and it had nothing to do with Europe. There is a very famous piece of John Cage which is called 4 minutes and 33 seconds, which was composed in the 1950s. And it's a piece that consists of 4 minutes and 33 seconds of silence. But there's a silence which is structured, so it's a piece of 3 movements, and each movement has a certain duration, which is notated in the score. So, in fact, you can buy a score which consists of 3 pages of blank music paper, just indicating the duration of this piece. And the performance of the piece would mean that you perform 4 minutes and 33 seconds of not doing anything. Instead of that, you could listen. And if you perform the piece in a concert, which is quite absurd, then the sound that would be heard is not the sound of the music or the performer, but the sound that surrounds us. So that's mainly the sound of the audience. The John Cage Foundation in New York had this wonderful idea to construct a mobile app which allows everybody to perform an individual version of this piece of John Cage at any point of the world. So you can just say, now I'm here in this situation, and I open the app and I record this 4 minutes and 33 seconds, subdivided into 3 parts of different lengths, and then you can upload it on the web server, and then other people can listen to it and say, okay, I was there, and or I would like to see what has been recorded in Vienna, and then you can go on Google Maps and find all these pins that indicates what has been recorded on this spot. And for me, as I'm very interested in field recordings, this was a fantastic tool to record environments and also make it public, because there was a sort of infrastructure that allowed it to be heard also by others. And finally, a person from Germany was completely fascinated by this app, and he wrote a book about it. Have you heard about it? His name is Peter Berg, and he wrote a book about his experiences with this app and some people who he met through this app, either in person or virtually. So he had contacted me by email and wrote some stories to the sound recordings that I did on very different places of the world, sort of fictions. And then we finally met in Germany once, where we had our first face-to-face meeting, and it was very interesting to see an old man, a pensioner, he used to be a teacher, being completely absorbed by this idea that you can travel with your ears all over the world. There is something that I, as a composer, find very important and interesting, that nowadays we can distribute our music, our findings, our art through the internet. So breaking borders. So as a composer, I'm not only restricted to concert halls where my music can be heard, but I can also publish it on the web, on my website, or on different channels like YouTube or SoundCloud, and give people the possibility to experience the music and maybe also not only the sound, but also some performances where you can see the musician, how they play. This is fantastic, and it opens the world for me, and it gives me the possibility also to connect with other people and worldwide, and to share ideas and to make collaborations outside of institutions.